Please take your seats. Good morning to you all and welcome to the Farnesima. I am the Director General for Europe and International Trade Policy here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I greet the ministers, vice ministers and undersecretaries who are here with us. The President of the Agriculture Committee of the Senate, and Honorable Candiani, President of the European Policy Committee of the Senate, the ambassadors and the representatives of the European Union, of the European Economic Space and of the Western Balkans. Today, in streaming, we also have some Euro parliamentarians with us who represent ministries, the representatives of ministries and of the various categories and business associations that are interested in the functioning of Nutrinform, and the representatives of the main industrial businesses and of the agri-food system of Italy. The working languages are Italian, English and French. For the people with us via streaming, they will have received 3 different links that were sent to them in the last few days for their language, and the event is recorded. Now, without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Minister Di Maio. Minister, you have the floor. I am very pleased to be able to greet you here at the Farnesina for this event on Nutrinform battery, which is our national proposal for a common food labeling system at the European level. I would like to greet and thank all my colleagues from the government and those who are with us and those who are connected via the internet, and all those who have accepted this invitation to be either present or with us virtually, with whom we have worked on the development of the Nutrinform battery. I would also like to greet the representatives of the diplomatic corps of the European member countries, the European institutions, and representatives of the industrial world, the trade world. And I would also like to thank Federalimentari that organized, together with the Farnesina, this event today, President Ivano Facondio, for the constant impulse and support given to the work done in Italy on labeling, on food labeling in particular. As you know, within the framework of the European strategy called Farm to Fork, the European Commission has announced its intention to present, by the end of 2022, a draft to harmonize food labeling systems at European level. Now, several member states have already adopted labeling systems on a voluntary basis, and the effects of these systems have had, there has been an impact of these on the marketing of food products. Now, we are against, as Italy, we are against mechanisms that are based on the traffic light system, like the Nutri-Score system, because they are simplistic and not based on clear scientific foundations. These systems are aimed at influencing consumer choices by expressing summary and easy-to-read judgments about the nutritional quality of individual foods, thus subjecting them to an arbitrary classification. Products like milk because of the algorithms of these systems, they could be given a score that is worse than soft drinks. So we felt it was necessary to develop a national system on the labeling of foods, which is an alternative to the traffic light system and in line with the European legislation on the subject. The aim is to safeguard the interest of each single production of the European agri-food chains and protect the export of all those premium foods that benefit from quality designations such as PGI and PDO, and which could find themselves unfairly penalized by the adoption of labeling systems that are not based on scientific grounds. Now, as we will hear from the scientists who will be speaking today, with the Nutrinform battery, we want to facilitate things for the user so that users can have a clear understanding of the energy and nutritional characteristics of the foods they want to buy, and without discriminatory criteria. And Aristotle argued, so our proposal of Nutrinform battery intends to provide a factual contribution to the debate by providing an alternative to the traffic light systems. I would like to thank you once again and thank Federalimentare, and trusting in the importance of the discussion that's going to be held today, I wish you all the best in your work. I would like to thank Minister Di Maio, and I now ask Minister Patuanelli, Minister for Agriculture and Agricultural and Food and Forestry Policies, to take the floor. Good morning to you all. I wish to thank Minister Di Maio and the ambassadors who have gathered here and who in recent times have contributed to organizing this meeting. And I would also like to reinforce the importance of the European task forces on this issue. I agree to Minister for Speranza, the ministers who were present, and all those present. Now, speaking about front labeling means also looking to the future of agri-food systems, not only in Italy but in Europe. I'm saying this because it is of fundamental importance to immediately focus on the subject matter of our discussion. I perceive that there is a common willingness by some countries to make sure that our foods can become commodities that we cannot accept. Yesterday, I presented a report, an annual report, the report of ISMEA, on IGP, SGT, and other denominations. We have 141 products in Italy that are DOPs, IGTs, and SGTs. We have 16.6 billion value, 19% of the entire food sector of Italy, food production sector, that have a label that is protected, and they represent premium products, 200,000 operators. So these are figures that need no comment. So our farming system is of a distinctive nature. It is of excellence. There are products that are grown only in certain parts of our country where that crop has been a tradition, and therefore the labels must provide information. They must not only direct the users, the consumers' decisions, but we need to protect our systems and also make sure that every citizen receives the right information about the food that he eats. So One Health strategy does not coincide with one diet for all. the idea is that of consuming in a moderate manner all foods. The Mediterranean diet is the right response that takes into account the health, that takes into account the excellencies of our country, the excellent products. And if we look back to the past, Nutrinform battery is a system which is based on scientific data. It is based on real analyses of what the human body needs in terms of food. It is a long-standing story that dates back to 2017. In November, when the ministers Calenda, Lorenzin, Martina and Alfano decided that the time had come to provide an alternative response to Nutri-Score. And then in 2018, there was a consultation, and with a memorandum of understanding between Minister Di Maio, Economic Development, Minister Grillo, Health, and Minister Centinaio, Agricultural Policy, they decided to start a trial, a test, and by the end of, on the 27th of January 2020, they came up with a document from the Ministry of Economic Development. Well, the proposal saw the light, and I'm putting it to your attention today. We feel it is very positive, and the whole country has taken an interest in developing this system, and I thank, therefore, all the various business groups, the business associations, the large distribution system through to processing, and the producers, manufacturers. All together, we immediately perceived the risk of giving people misinformation and the negative impact this would have on our agricultural products. And agriculture is the leading sector of our economy, and therefore it was important to set the score right. Information is one thing, and conditioning people's choices is a totally different thing. So we base, or Nutrinform battery is based on scientific data, on the idea of an average serving, and you cannot use an algorithm which equates any food on the basis of 100 milliliters or 100 milligrams. This is a misinterpretation that could harm our production systems. So we are now going to listen to the various contributions, and for us, in any case, it is clear the path that we wish to follow is clear. And in recent talks with my counterparts in other countries who were in favor of multi-score, now they are very interested in Nutrinform battery, thanks to the scientific grounds on which this system has been built. I wish you all the best in your work. Thank you, Minister Patronelli, and now Minister Speranza, Minister of Health, to come to the podium. Thank you. Good morning to you all. My dear ministers, thank you, Minister Di Maio, for having organized this meeting together with the ambassadors and representatives of the Italian production world. It is a true pleasure for me to be here this morning and bring the contribution of the Ministry of Health to this discussion dedicated to the presentation of the Nutrinform battery system. I think that this is the right time to take action on this theme. The Ministry of Health in recent years has paid constant attention to the problems of food adequacy, diet adequacy, and this has grown with Italy's presidency of the G20 and the work done on interconnection between food systems and health through the Matera Declaration, and then the declaration of the Ministers of Health who convened in Rome at the Musei Capitolini. Therefore, today it is a pleasure for me need to be present here. Also, from the standpoint of public health, it is of fundamental importance that political strategies be directed towards the enhancement of the food system. Therefore, we need communication strategies that should be based on the data of a balanced diet, especially in a world where the fight against non-transmissible chronic disorders continues to be a priority. Italy has an undoubted leading position here, and we know that the agri-food and agricultural products of our country, together with the culinary tradition of our country, ensure the respect for the environment and ethical values. The presence of these foods and complying with a model that is linked to the Mediterranean diet are linked to a better nutritional content and therefore related with fewer health problems. In recent years, there has been a gradual abandonment of the Mediterranean diet to the advantage of dietary styles and food styles that are less healthy. And this has contributed to the diffusion amongst the people of obesity, which is a risk factor for many disorders, amongst which diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disorders, and certain types of cancer. Now, this type of disease is also a worsening factor for COVID-19, and it has an impact on spending on health in Italy and in the world. The analysis done during the G20 shows that COVID-19 has marked steps backward in attaining the objectives of the end of the Millennium Goals, and therefore it is important to adopt nutritional policies based on the principles of a sustainable diet and balanced diet by strengthening strategies and programs that promote healthy lifestyles. Having recourse to Mediterranean diet indeed not only brings an improvement in the health conditions of the population, but it is accompanied also by the consumption of healthy products such as fruit and vegetables. It is therefore of fundamental importance to work in order to create a new awareness on the values of the Mediterranean diet, and the political and scientific communities have acknowledged that it represents a set of competences, practices that go from the landscape to the table, including crop growing, the transformation, food processing, fishing, and so on, and the consumption of food. Nutritional data, the physical exercise, and so on can reduce diseases and therefore have less people in the hospitals. And therefore, it is of strategic importance to draw on traditional knowledge and to use the Mediterranean diet right from primary school, because this helps preventing pathologies once they grow up and make them aware of the huge potential that the adoption of a Mediterranean diet may have also from the economic standpoint. In order to do this, we need a strategy that promotes this type of life, this lifestyle at the international level, ensuring that it has visibility and that the message may be addressed to the people and to all consumers. In this context, nutritional labeling systems should represent an instrument that is useful for understanding the characteristics and the compounds and nutritional contents of a food, allowing it to be placed within a varied and balanced diet whose meaning must be promoted through adequate initiatives in terms of training and information. Therefore, we must not impose misleading models. In order to ensure nutritional well-being, consumers must be informed in a transparent manner and be put in a position to choose healthy and appropriate foods, irrespective of a food and cultural scheme. The Nutrinform battery that we're talking about today appears to be the most appropriate instrument for this, because it is objective with regard to the relationship between macronutrients, ingredients and servings. So it allows to make labeling or to provide a labeling system which is easy to understand by the users. The Ministry of Health, together with the Ministry of Agricultural Policies and Economic Development, has developed with the Higher Institute of Health the CREA to evaluate the impact of this type of labeling on nutritional understanding and knowledge of the families. That will be illustrated later by Professor Silano. At the same time, we have indicated there is a comparative study done with the University of Turin with regard to compliance with these systems amongst the Italian population. An initiative was launched also in Dubai on the 16th of October on the World Food Day. A second project that we are promoting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with regard to the UN is the creation of an observatory on the Mediterranean diet that I would like to remind you has been recognized by UNESCO as an intangible asset of the society, of mankind. And therefore, it is important to promote this type of approach. These are initiatives that show that the Ministry of Health and the government are focused on working on this in this field, which is crucial for health, for the economy, and for support to the food sector. And the government must continue to work on this with the utmost firmness. Thank you, and I too wish you all the best in your work. Thank you, Minister Speranza. I now pass the floor to the President of Federalimentari, Ivano Acondio.
Presidente. Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by truly thanking Minister Di Maio, who is our host today. Thank you for having organized this very important event. I also wish to thank Ministers Patuanelli, Speranza, and Minister Giorgetti, who isn't present, although he is represented by Undersecretary Piketty, all of whom are working together with the government and the parliament as a country on this topic. I also wish to mention another person who isn't here with us today, but who deserves to be mentioned, because together with Undersecretary Amendola, we did an extraordinary activity in Brussels with the MEPs. It was also a wonderful success in terms of participation. Undersecretary Amendola isn't here for health reasons today, so I wish to greet him. I wish him all the best, and I'd like to thank him for all of the work we did together. I also wish to express my heartfelt thanks to all of the experts who will be taking the floor today, all ambassadors present, whose contribution, both from the scientific and professional point of view, will underscore the extremely high level of this discussion. Thanks to this event, and thanks to the commitment and the coherence of the unity with which we are working on something which is a true battle of civilization. Issues linked to nutrition are essential for Europe, both at present and in the future. Nutrition is one of the most significant and high-impact elements of our life, namely our nutrition, our food. And through this, we wish to blend matters such as health, our traditions, our territory, our sense of what it is to be a community. And last but not least, it is also a way of giving future generations a more sustainable world, a world which is more respectful of its natural resources. Solutions within this context have don't have to be partisan choices. They have to be the outcome of a shared and broad discussion within the EU. That is the spirit behind this event. We wish to open the floor to a discussion offering the other EU member states all of the tools and studies developed by Italy, its government, its experts, and all of its productive sector, all of its consumers. Nutrinform battery is a one-of-a-kind product. It is the outcome of a discussion between all stakeholders. It isn't the proposal of the industry or the agri-food sector, as happened in other schemes in the past. An entire country worked on fine-tuning this system to make it available to the broader European community, as was previously underscored by the ministers who took the floor before me. Keep in mind that for the very first time, this proposal was shared with the European Commission already in 2018 during a discussion regarding the harmonization of front-of-pack labeling systems. And therefore, as a way of going back to the proposal's original spirit, we are here today in the hope that today's discussion won't be limited to the nutrition labeling system alone compared to others. It has to broaden our horizon, and it has to lead us to discuss what kind of European nutritional culture do we want. In other words, do we want to allow consumers to have healthier diets, or do we want to guide them in buying one product rather than another? Do we want consumers to focus on diets, individual needs? Do we want to allow consumers to choose based on their health requirements? Or do we simply want to focus on standardizing diets and productions? Do we want to consider our production traditions? Do we want to consider the specificities of our territories? Or do we want to ignore age-old traditions? Think of wine. Only because we don't want to focus on educating that all foods can be consumed with the right amounts and with the right frequency. The Italian market is the #1 exporter on the global level of agri-food systems, and it is a major part of Europe's production. It is made up of SMEs for the most part. Or do we want to focus on global homologation? Of course, I do understand that a label alone won't answer all these questions, but in defining the criteria which are present in this labeling system, I think we have to ask ourselves all of the questions I mentioned. I think today is the right place to start offering answers. Only by participating in a deep discussion can we find common and shared solutions. And allow me to add that personally, I have committed time and energy. I have devoted all of my efforts to promoting this topic because I am passionate about the subject, and I am very much convinced that I am in the right and that I am doing the right thing. Not for a sector, but for a country and for European consumers. Thank you very much for your kind attention today. Thank you for listening to my remarks. And it is an honor to leave the floor to Ambassador Celeste, who is today's moderator. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Vacundio. And the guest of honor in this battle for civilization is the Ministry for Economic Development. Undersecretary, you have the floor. Thank you and good morning. I'd like to thank you on behalf of Minister Giorgetti, who unfortunately wasn't able to attend this event today. I wish to thank Minister Di Maio for having organized this meeting of ours, which allows us to express our vision regarding a topic which we can't compromise on. I'm referring to the health of consumers, and I'm referring to the consequences in our production system. Let me begin with something which may sound trivial, but which is essential. We have to be aware of the fact that we have a common vision, a common strategy with Ministers Speranza and Minister Patuanelli on the need to defend the Italian agri-food system and food culture itself. The traffic light system proposed by France isn't so much a system to inform consumers. It may very well become a system to influence consumers. That is the risk we face if the French position, which supports Nutri-Score, will become a benchmark for the European Commission for future legislation on the topic. We know that the European Commission wishes to adopt a decision in this sense, which would be binding and no longer free by 2022. Last December 13th, a public discussion was started to amend the current regulation as a way of finding a standard that can harmonize national policies by the end of 2022. And therefore, I urge you to participate in the consultation and to express our vision with strength. And out of 771 comments, Italy ranks number 2 currently with 132. We have to absolutely avoid European rules to be to the disadvantage of our agri-food excellencies, to the advantage of other countries which don't have our tradition, our variety, and the array of our products. Regardless of any idea, I think that the quality of food and the health of consumers is something which isn't guided by economic interests or within the European context. That is the position we will continue to have in all contexts. It is a position we wish to express strongly. Also, thanks to the constant dialogue with Federalimentare, we designed an innovative app which can run on all mobile platforms, including Android and Apple, and consumers can have an augmented reality experience by focusing on a product with their smartphone so that through their screens they will be able to see a virtual label with nutritional information expressed based on WHO data based on the recommended daily doses. The minister has discussed with his colleagues Speranza and Patuanelli at length on the possibility of offer further information regarding PDO and PGI products, which were initially excluded from the decree, which had been implemented in November 2020, with the concern that these could be implemented with the traffic light systems. But of course, we have to have a united front. We cannot conceive separating PGI, PDO products from others. A possible compromise is that of allowing consumers to view further nutritional information even for these products without the Nutrinform logo. The Nutrinform labeling system is a transparent one in the way in which designed and implemented, and it is also very much comprehensive in the information it provides. It is a simple way of obtaining information regarding the characteristics of products without expressing any absolute judgment, which are misleading, given the fact that all consumers have their own individual ideas and position. This kind of labeling system is aimed at aware consumers who go out and look for further information. These consumers, therefore, don't want superficial information, and they don't want to benefit from easy or simple information, which is at the very basis of the Nutri-Score system. The Nutri-Score system is misleading. It claims to be omniscient on what is good or bad for consumers. I think that this is the biggest inconsistency and danger in Nutri-Score. streamlined information isn't something good per se, because it can mislead consumers with filtered and selected information based on algorithms we do not share. The goal isn't to train ignorant consumers who would have to have a system with which to choose what to buy. Our goal is to offer accurate and comprehensive information, which are two things that the Nutri-Score system does not have. And based on these comments, an increasing number of businesses, including multinational corporations, are starting to implement the Nutrinform system. Some use its label on their products, and some mention Nutrinform on their logos or websites. In Europe, we have the support of a number of associations such as COPA, COGECA, which represent the important agricultural sector in Europe. The LEDA, the milk industry, and the Origin Products Association, which say that the traffic light system penalized the Mediterranean diet. Ours isn't a religious war. It is a logical consequence of our commitment in defending consumers first and foremost, along with our agri-food industry and our producers with them, who want to give all proper information on food to consumers. And therefore, we have to focus on defending our entire production system, beginning with agriculture. In fact, if we are the oldest country in Europe, there must be a reason. Thank you.
La ringrazio.
Thank you, and I know Minister Di Maio has to leave us at this point. As you know, he will be traveling to Kiev for a mission that we will pay very careful attention to. Let us now move on to the second part of our event today. I also wish to underline the importance of today's meeting. As the ministers were saying, this is a very important topic for the government and for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in general. We want to underscore the commitment with which our diplomats are working to safeguard the interests of our agri-food sector in all European contexts. And in fact, over the past 3 years, we have had a heated debate within the EU on implementing uniform nutrition labeling systems to be applied to all member states in a mandatory way. As you know, and as we heard a number of times this morning, thanks to a strong promotion action, the traffic light systems have become the main option on the negotiation table. This is the main option which, in fact, stems from the lack of true alternatives, in fact. And now, Nutrinform is no longer a mere hypothesis. It is a real alternative which is present and consolidated domestically. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is committed to extending our food labeling system also to the EU to achieve the goals we mentioned so far, namely to make sure that Europe can equip itself with a fair and impartial system that can offer scientific and objective scores compared to the nutritional values of foods. In other words, this is a system that can safeguard health without penalizing production systems, without bringing about market distortions, inducing consumers to choose some products rather than others. The point is that if we are to have a common labeling system, the system has to be comprehensive, transparent, non-biased, and it has to be based on sound scientific evidence. We are doing everything we can to avoid implementing systems that can create major damage to our agri-food industry. And we're doing this through an effective way of promoting the Nutrinform system, which is what we're doing today, but also by trying to consolidate the point of view and the action of our European partners who share our view and who I have the pleasure of seeing represented here today. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through the DG for the European Union and International Trade Policy, and through the permanent representation to the EU, has a guiding role in guiding the debate on the discussions that will lead to the Commission's proposal to be presented in the second half of the year. Now, the outcome of our activities are already clear to see in a number of different contexts. First of all, with the support of the Czech Republic, we published a position paper identifying in a clear and transparent way the general principles that the future common European nutritional labeling system should be inspired by. This is a document which was shared and undersigned by Cyprus, Greece, Latvia, Romania, and Hungary. More recently, we intensified our information campaign on the advantages linked to the adoption of a system such as a Nutrinform battery, a battery system. We worked on promotion events in our embassies in Europe, and these events brought about a more in-depth discussion, even in those countries which initially had joined the Nutri-Score initiative. Minister Patonelli mentioned Spain, but we also have news coming from the Netherlands. And we know that there are doubts and skepticism, even in countries in which the Nutri-Score system is already deeply rooted. And we're seeing doubts from a number of associations in France as well. Therefore, today's event is another essential step in the journey that we are working on together to define a common proposal to lead to fair and balanced nutrition labeling systems for our country so that we can also safeguard European consumers' choices. And for this reason, I'd now like to give the floor to the scientific experts for their presentations, beginning with Professor Michele Caruba of the University of Milan. He is the former president of the Italian Obesity Association. Let's begin, therefore, with the protection of health. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you. It is an honor for me to be here with you to try and understand together what is the importance of speaking about nutritional labeling in a situation where the problem of health of the population of the world is undermined by a disorder that is called obesity. I would like to begin with the first video, or the first slide. Here we see the prevalence of obesity in the world starting from 1975. And as the colors become darker, they indicate the higher prevalence of obesity in the world. Today, the issue of obesity is a young disorder somehow, because before the last World War it did not exist, but over a matter of 50 years obesity has become a true pandemic ignored by most people, because obesity is not experienced in many countries as a disease, but rather as an aesthetic or cosmetic problem. As chairman of the Center for Research and Study on Obesity at the University of Milan, back in 1999, on the occasion of the European Conference on Obesity, we tried to launch the Milan Declaration, which was a call for action by scientists addressed to politicians in order to organize something that might prevent and treat this disease. In 2015, we launched the Milan Declaration again at the Expo, and in 2020, we published or this was endorsed also by the European Society of Obesity. This is the Milan Declaration, the Milan Charter, that explains how life should be reorganized in the towns in order to prevent them from becoming a facilitating system for obesity, and therefore a problem for people's health, for the people who live in these towns, in these cities. If we look at the prevalence of obesity and of being overweight in European states, you can see that obesity and being overweight, well, 60%, more than half the European population, has a problem associated with a weight that is not compatible with good health.
Guardare all'obesità.
We are more concerned now also by child obesity. An obese baby has an 85% probability of being obese as an adult. Therefore, seeing what children are like today means knowing what will happen in the future. In many European countries, child obesity and being overweight in children accounts for more than 40% of children. And I'm speaking of children up to the age of 9. The World Health Organization envisages that by 2030, 9 European states will have a proportion of obesity, only obesity, not being overweight, obesity that will be more than 30% of the population. And this is a huge problem. As we shall see, it has an impact on health, but it also has an impact on the costs of the national health systems. And we know with certainty that no national health system can be sustainable economically in conditions where the prevalence of obesity reaches these levels. You can see that the issue of obesity has an impact on all the organs of our body, the lungs, the bowel, urinary tract, the sexual system, and through to myocardium infarction and all the coronary diseases, stroke, which are diseases that lead to death. Therefore, they are deadly diseases. 35% of tumors are linked to obesity. 35% of tumors could be prevented by preventing obesity. So obesity is a disorder that has an impact on life, on health, on life expectancy, both in men and women. Life expectancy is reduced by 8.4 years in men and 6 years in women. And what is worse is shown by this study, which shows that obesity has an impact also on the years of life lost in healthy life years. Healthy years are reduced by 18% in men and women. So not only is life shorter, but even the last 20 years of life are spent in conditions of precarious health conditions. As the Minister of Health said, the pandemic of coronavirus has an impact on another pandemic that is ignored, namely obesity. And together, the results show that the people with obesity were those who were most affected by COVID-19. They with a higher risk of a hospitalization, and once they are hospitalized, they are most of the people in intensive care. They are intubated and in the end, also mortality is higher for obese people. So mortality of coronavirus depends also on the impact it has on individuals. Therefore, we should speak of syndemic when two pandemics meet and join forces. Today, this study of 2005 New England Journal of Medicine tells us that obesity is the first cause of death that is preventable. Once it was smoking, today it's obesity which is at the top of the list. In the United States, where obesity is more prevalent than here, well, finally, well, it's a figure of speech. Young people will have a possibility of, the life expectancy of young people today is less than that of their forefathers, of their parents and grandparents. This is the first time that this happens in history, and it is due to obesity. And here, well, why? Why isn't obesity considered a disease today? Because many people think that obesity is a problem linked to the individual, that an obese person is incapable of handling his or her willpower, and therefore they're stigmatized. But this is a disease which arises from the malfunctioning of a system which seeks to reach a homeostasis of body weight. There is a system whereby many signals that come from the stomach, the liver, the fatty tissue, from the pancreas, they go to the brain, and the brain directs the consumption of food. And when the system no longer works, then there is hyperphagia and therefore obesity. Hyperphagia is not the cause of obesity, but the symptom of the malfunctioning of the system.
È una malattia.
Therefore, it is a disease. You can see, however, that hyperphagia, that is an enhanced or increased consumption of food, from 1950 to date, well, the net number of calories has increased a lot. In 1950, 2,000 calories would be consumed, whereas now it's 2,800, and it leads to obesity. And there is a higher use of cars that reduce the consumption of energy. So the balance between the energy that is introduced and the energy that is spent is less. People take lifts, they don't walk up the stairs. And people spend a lot of time in the sitting position, sitting at a computer. And this has troubled, it has offset the balance, or it has caused the imbalance. So our diet has changed over the years, but the Mediterranean diet and its tradition is something that the Americans at some point asked themselves, why do Italians live longer than the Americans? And they started sending their scientists to Italy to try and understand whether there was a relationship between the lifestyle of Italians and their longevity. And Professor Angel Keys, together with many scientists, Italian scientists in Apulia, did the 7-country study, which is acknowledged across the world today, and that is the Mediterranean diet is recognized. There are hundreds of thousands of scientific papers that agree on stating that the Mediterranean diet is the best diet with regard to the impact on health. And the Mediterranean diet is represented by this pyramid, where in the lower part we have the foods that should be consumed at every meal. Then as we go up, the foods that are consumed every day, and at the top, foods that should be consumed once a week. So there are foods that should be present every day in our body. We are what we eat. And if we don't have certain inputs, our body will suffer. And this has been demonstrated in the Mediterranean diet, where we see not only the foods that we should consume, but also the amounts. Here you see the servings. Every day, or at each meal, 1 or 2 portions of fruit and vegetables, and so on. At the top, sweets in our Mediterranean diet, sweets would be consumed only on a Sunday, on a feast day, whereas now they are eaten every day. So maintaining the principles of the Mediterranean diet not only has an impact on health, but it has an impact on the environment, because as you can see, the foods that are at the base of the pyramid that we are to eat more frequently are those that have a lower impact on the health of the planet, whereas the ones that we should eat more rarely are those that have a bigger impact on the environment. So what are the characteristics of the Mediterranean diet, apart from the balance? As you can see, small amounts of cheese and eggs, small amounts of meat, red meat, processed meats, of animal fat. In the Mediterranean diet, the more fish would be consumed, more grains or cereals, olive oil, and fruit and vegetable. Not only fresh fruit, but also nuts and the like. So there are studies that state that, and these are studies carried out over many years, and they all agree on the implementation of only 2 of the characteristics that we just saw. The Mediterranean diet are capable of reducing by 20% the causes or the all-cause mortality. So the impact of the Mediterranean diet on health is undisputable. Today, this has been recognized. Unfortunately, we are losing the habits of the Mediterranean diet. Here we see the food pyramid, inside which we find the percentages of consumption. Unfortunately, the mistakes made in terms of food are linked to the lack of consumption rather than the excess of consumption. 65-80% of the population eats less fruit than it should. For instance, with regard to fish, 59% of people consume less fish than they should. But there's no one that consumes more fish than they should. And you can see that sugars and sweets that are too simple, or the sweets that should be eaten once a week, well, 49% eats too much, but nobody that eats less sugars. Now, we need to take all this into account when we speak about nutritional labeling. We have tried, since this is an issue that many have dealt with it, and the discussion and the bases are economic rather than scientific, whereas we have studied and looked at the nutritional Nutri-Score versus Nutrinform battery, see whether it would have an impact on obesity. And what we published, this paper was published in an international journal. Well, this was upheld by all the Italian societies that deal with food and diets. Italian Association of Dietetics and Clinical Nutrition, the Italian Obesity Network, the Italian Society for Eating Disorders, the Italian Society of Food Sciences, Endocrinology, the Pediatricians, and the Italian Obesity Society. They all agreed, they all contributed. They all have taken into account these things, and they've seen the critical aspects of Nutri-Score. They've seen that Nutri-Score is something which it's like a traffic light that goes from green to red, passing through yellow, where A is good and E is bad. Now, this is too simplistic to deal with this problem. It's simplistic because there's no such thing as a good or bad food in the absolute sense, but it's the habit. Good habit and bad habit. And good eating habits are made of many things. They're not made only of quality, but of amount, of quantity as well, the amount that we eat. And we are referring to servings. The servings are very important. In some respects, it gives us an idea of the dosage. Now, you know that if you take too much medicine, it can kill you. If you take the right amount, you will heal. If you take too little, it will have no effect no good effect. Now, with food, it's the same thing. There is a perfect dosage. If you go below that dosage, then you will have problems because the body will be in want of something in order for it to work properly. Then if you eat too much of something, that can cause damage. So the amount is extremely important. Nutri-Score has also another defect, and that is that it focuses too much on the negative aspects of food. 40 points are attributed to the negative impact of food on health, whereas only 15 are the positive impacts. And food can be a medicine. It can be the cause for health. So if we eat well, we must recognize the ability that food has to make us healthy.
The other thing we criticize about Nutri-Score is that it evaluates 100 grams of product, which isn't accurate. Just for example, no one of us will ever use 100 grams of olive oil. The portion we use of olive oil is between 10 and 30 grams. If we were to eat 100 grams of olive oil, that certainly wouldn't be positive. Therefore, that would move towards a negative Nutri-Score. Whereas we know, and we've seen, that if we eat 15 grams per day of olive oil can be important because it reduces obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. This has been proven time and time again from a scientific point of view. So let me conclude by saying that obesity is linked to education. In this study we conducted, you'll notice that the children of those who have one parent with a university degree, in Milan, for instance, the population in Milan of children who have one parent with a university degree, in those cases, obesity stands at 3%. If one of the parents has a high school diploma, that figure goes up to 4%. If they only have a junior high diploma, that goes up to 10%. And I'm referring to child obesity, it becomes 13% without any kind of diploma. That proves that this is a cultural issue. In fact, obesity is a lot more widespread in the poorer sectors of society, not just economic poverty, but cultural poverty as well. That's why the problem can be solved through education. We have to help. We eat 4 times a day, but we never eat with a rational approach. We tend to eat by going along with something which is somewhat hedonistic. We like it, we eat it. We don't like it, we don't eat it. Which means we have to have a minimum amount of rationality, and that can be attained through nutritional education in schools. And in Milan, in fact, we have launched a food and nutritional awareness campaign in schools by promoting fruit and vegetable gardens in schools, allowing children to understand and have a cultural relationship with the food that they eat at their table, allowing them to eat that food in an easier way. And if we explain to them that cooking certain foods in certain ways has a different hedonistic meaning compared to if we cook the food in a different way, well, children learned. And after 5 years of this campaign in Milan, we now have a child obesity prevalence which stands at 4% compared to a 12% national average. And we have a prevalence in child overweight, which stands at 15% compared to a 24% national average, which means that nutrition and education regarding nutrition in schools works. Let me conclude, therefore, by saying that obesity and solving the issue of obesity is a cultural solution. It requires a cultural solution. We have to teach people how to eat. And we can do that by educating them in schools. And the sooner we begin, the more effective we can be. I always say, in a somewhat provocatory way, that in my professional life, I have never seen anyone dying because they weren't aware of math or art, but I have seen many people die because they didn't know how to eat. Thank you. Thank you. And would like to thank and say goodbye to Minister Speranza, who is leaving us due to an institutional commitment. I also wish to thank Professor Karuba very much for having underscored a number of key issues when it comes to education and the struggle against obesity. He defined obesity as being a true pandemic. And he said how important it is to focus on lifestyle and culture. Now, let's move from health to the European legal framework with Professor Vincenzo Salvatori of the University of Insubria, Varese, who is full professor of European Union law. And for the benefit of all speakers, I'd like to remind you of the fact that you have 20 minutes available. Professor, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I wish to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. I'd like to thank Federalimentare for their invitation. I'd like to share with you a few remarks regarding the European context. Let me just mention that when it comes to nutritional information, we have a multi-level system in which we have certain competencies which pertain to states and others to the European Union, which means that this is a set of concurrent competencies. Therefore, we have to apply the principle of subsidiarity. In other words, the European Union intervenes correctly when the goal we have is to implement things on a better way on the supranational level. When it comes to the safeguarding of health and consumers, which is the context we're talking about today, the competence of the EU, based on our treaties, is complementary. It is an integration to national legislation, which means that the EU has to choose the most adequate instrument to introduce laws to offer a legal framework. We have directives which allow member states to take into account the specificities of their national legislative systems. Therefore, we have shared principles, but can be differentiated on the national level. And then we have the harmonization instrument, which is applied in all member states in the same way without having the need to integrate national legislation. When it comes to food and nutrition and nutritional information specifically, we have two sets of rules, or two regulations rather. We only harmonize the one which is considered by the regulation. Everything which isn't expressly included in the regulation continues to be of national pertinence, and we have two regulations, one which dates back to 2006, which is more general on nutritional labeling and health, which is Regulation 1924, and one which dates back to 2011, which is the one we're most interested in, regarding the algorithms based on which we then offer information to consumers, which creates rules on how to offer information on food for consumers. Now, what does Regulation 1169/2011 envisage when it comes to information for consumers? First of all, it sets rules for the information which have to appear on food labels in a mandatory way. It also has a number of other elements which create rules for the further expression and presentation, which is what we're interested in when it comes to the battery or traffic light systems. And it also offers other rules concerning all those things which aren't harmonized, everything which is outside of the implementation of the regulation, plus further voluntary information which can or cannot be present, plus the mandatory complementary information. Now, the article which is most important when it comes to the topic discussed today is Article 35. Article 35 in the regulation refers to the information pertaining to energy value and the amount of nutritional substances. Now, these expressions, these presentations of food, which are supplementary compared to the information on the labels we have to comply with certain mandatory prerequisites, which for the most part are aimed at supporting the further information through sound scientific evidence with objectively proven research. They have to be objective and non-biased or non-discriminatory, because keep in mind that what the EU wants to avoid is that through these types of information, there can be the introduction of elements which are biased, which are a form of discrimination in the trade between member states, or which can bring about controversies between states in implementing further labels to those who wish to sell or market their product in a country other than their country of origin, in which there may be different legislation. Now, as far as this information is concerned, we have to make a distinction between real information, in other words, the information, the data, which are a component of the information, in other words, how much fiber, how much sugar, how much salt there is in a certain product, from information which are the expression of an assessment, an evaluation on the healthiness or toxicity of a certain food. Wherever I have an assessment, whenever I have an evaluation on the quality or the influence that food has on a balanced diet, at that point I make a health claim. In other words, I tell you whether or not that food is good or bad for you, in my opinion. And by doing so, that is a way of suggesting what consumers should buy or not. by saying that this certain food, based on a certain weight, includes 20 grams of salt or 5 grams of fat is one thing, compared to having a traffic light system, which is something altogether different. Now, what is the main advantage in having an information system such as a Nutrinform? The advantage is that we would allow consumers to obtain the information they need to make an aware choice. Obviously, if I buy a bar of chocolate, I know that if I eat 2 little squares of chocolate, I am consuming 30 grams of sugar. It would be different if I have a red traffic light on that bar of chocolate which says, don't eat this. And as Professor Celeste was saying, in a very scientifically accurate way, there is no good or bad food per se, because I'm not going to be eating 1.5 kilos of ham or half a jar of chocolate per day. If I were to do that, I would be going into a different territory altogether, would be moving away from the rules I have to comply with. Food isn't good or bad per se. Food is a component in a diet which has to be balanced and healthy, and compared to which it is up to the state, through information and education, to allow consumers to make their choices concerning balanced diets. Now, how can we support a nutritional labeling system that can promote healthy diets? What is the element of balance between information on the one hand and evaluations or assessments on the other? Do lawmakers have to inform or educate consumers? Does the state, does the European Union have to act as a teacher of sorts, or must it provide information so that consumers can make their in-depth and education and information-based choices when it comes to healthy diets? In Article 5, or Article 35, we see that there has to be a scientific base to what we offer. We can't give information unless we also provide information on the objective nature of that information, on the scientific soundness of that information. However, if that information includes an assessment element, that assessment claim will have to be verified as a way of assessing how good or bad it is. If I claim that a certain food is diuretic, there has to be information which supports that claim. For instance, by involving the EFSA, which operates in Europe. Keep in mind that in any case, the European Union's motto is united in diversity. And the diversity of cultural systems we have in Europe is something we have to preserve and protect. And it becomes somewhat risky to intervene with a system which doesn't take into account the information of the data which we are conveying to consumers. Because the risk there is that with the system, as stated by Article 35 of the functioning of the EU, whenever you identify an exception which can pose an obstacle to the free flow of goods between states that can be linked to health, but of course these tools cannot be invoked to introduce restrictions or dissimulated restrictions to trade between states. That's what I had in mind. I think that I have complied with the time given to me. Thank you for your kind attention. I'd like to thank our interpreters for their wonderful interpretation. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Salvatore. Deputy Minister Frattini is leaving us at this point, and we can now move on to the presentations regarding Nutrinform itself. This is a complex presentation. It is going to be presented by 3 different speakers. Professor Andrea Ghiselli, the former director of the Research Center on Food and Nutrition of the Council for Agricultural Research and Agricultural Economy Analysis. Then we also have Professor Laura Rossi of the Research Center on Food and Nutrition of the Council for Agricultural Research and Agricultural Economy Analysis, and we have Professor Marco Silano, Director of the Food, Nutrition and Health Operating Unit of the Italian National Institute of Health. Professor Ghiselli, you have the floor. I'm honored to represent the technical and scientific part of Italy's proposal together with my two colleagues today. I wish to thank you for your kind attention. Professor Salvatore already mentioned the fact that our proposal is based on EU Regulation 1169, which, again, allows the presence of graphic expressions to improve the presentation of a product, and which requires scientific support, scientific evidence for the labeling proposal, which should not discriminate and should not pose an obstacle to the free circulation of goods. Now, food labeling is part of the farm to fork strategy, and for good reason, which, as you can see in the blue paragraph, suggests that front of pack clear information can help consumers in making their choices, allowing them to make informed, healthy, and sustainable food choices, both for their health and for the environment. Now, even prior to Regulation 1169, a number of labeling proposals were designed, beginning with the Scandinavian keyhole to the traffic light system we mentioned a few minutes ago, the Nutri-Score. And as you can see, some of these systems are information-based. In other words, they illustrate the nutrients included in a specific product. Other systems are directives of sorts. In other words, they try to attract consumers' attention with a color to allow them or to lead them to make an immediate choice. And this isn't information. These are just directives. They are a choice made on behalf of consumers. Whereas we focused our choice on providing information to consumers.
This is what happens in the United States and in South America. There are several labeling systems. Some are warnings in black, high calories, high sugar content, and so on. Others are colored, like the traffic lights. In Australia, a system is based on 5 stars, which is a summary system like Nutri-Score. Others have warning systems, and others like the traffic lights. Now, we have chosen to provide the facts, the information. So we've developed a system which is objective. It doesn't interpret anything. It says what is contained in the food pack that we're buying and what would be present in a serving so that the consumer knows exactly the extent to which that serving is going to have an impact on his overall diet. If a food is too rich in a given nutrient, then he will understand that that nutrient must not be present in the other food he eats, because as we said, no food is good or bad, but there are good diets made with all the foods and bad diets. So it's a fact-based system, and it is not summary. If I'm hypertensive, and I must be careful with salt, with the Nutri-Score system, I don't know how much salt is present in a food. It doesn't give me the information of the individual nutrients present in a product, and it is not directive. So it is based on the references of Annex 13 of Regulation 1169, which considers 2,000 calories as the per diem amount, established on the basis that it's a round figure and it is more or less the average consumption of the average European population. And here we indicate the cutoffs, that is, the amounts of the various components that should not be exceeded every day. Total fats, saturated fatty acids, carbohydrates, sugars, and salts. Nutrinform, and I'll summarize it in these three labels. In the first upper left, you see the consumer understands that a serving of spaghetti allo scoglio contains quite a lot of salt, because it contains 40% of the total amount of salt for one day, but also the energy. 1/5 of the energy is provided by these spaghetti. Fruit yogurt is less demanding, 6% of total calories, 7% fat. Obviously, it's whole. So the saturated fats are quite high, 17%. And the sugar content, or the saturated fat, 70% of the saturated fat per one day. And a chocolate cake, obviously, the sugars are 36%. Of the maximum amount that should not be exceeded every day. Half of the saturated fats, 30% of overall fat, with a considerable proportion of energy. So the consumer, faced with this type of label, the consumer knows how much a serving that he is going to eat will impact on his daily diet, and he also learns the concept of serving. This is why it is extremely important, in our view, that this type of label may contribute to the general education of food education of the consumer. And now pass the floor to my colleague Laura Rossi, who will carry on. Good morning to you all. Obviously, I too thank the organizers for this invitation, because this allows us to explain what the scientific bodies have done, the scientific bodies that have worked alongside the ministries with regard to the development of the scientific part of Nutrinform. So we should go forward with the presentation, with the slides, please. Okay. Oh, so it's rather slow. Scientists take some time to understanding things. I'm sorry, you don't have the animation here. However, what we showed here, we've heard a lot about servings, and we are happy that the concept of portion or serving has been understood and introduced into the Nutrinform system, because we were very keen on this. Being nutritionists, this aspect was very dear to us. Saying 100 grams or whatever, you don't know whether it's 100 grams or if it's more or whatever. So we have used the foods that we eat for the pleasure of eating them. Here we see potato chips. Previously, we put together the potato chips to show how much they weighed. So if it's 25 grams, the evaluation is a given type, and if it's 100 grams, the color will be different. We must teach the consumer to eat only 25 grams and not the whole package. This is of importance for all foods. All foods should be consumed only in the amount that is advised and recommended by a nutritional expert. And this is the difference that we focused on with regard to Nutri-Score. We tried to develop the Nutrinform in this way. That is, it is based on a serving, on a portion, on a serving. And is characterized by a serving, as Andrea said. So it can be used either per serving or per 100 grams. Now, the serving is objective. It's not the amount that the consumer chooses to eat because and it's not the amount sold, what the manufacturer decides. It's not the manufacturer that decides what the portion or serving is, but it is standardized and it is decided by the organizational bodies. I'm sorry, here the animation doesn't work. In Italy, we use the LARNs, which is the level of assumption and reference of nutrients and energy, where we see how big a serving should be. We have done the same in our in the guidelines for a healthy diet. These guidelines have been drawn up with the contribution of many. Here we find a table containing the servings. So they are grouped by type. So we indicate not only the size of the servings as individual products, so how much pasta, how much oil, and the user knows exactly what it corresponds to without the need for a scale. And we know how many of those servings are to be used for a diet based on 2,000 calories, or for a diet of 2,500 calories, or 1,500 calories. We have all tried to lose weight, and we know that low-calorie diets must be within 1,500 calories. So here we see the various foods that are to be eaten in the right amounts, in the right servings. This is what we show in our guidelines, and above all, what is to be included in the manual for the Nutrinform battery. and our colleagues from the private sector know this document, which indicates how much the serving corresponds to. And there's a table also, the table that we showed, with a standard serving and the measurement standard, which could be a spoon of rice or a baguette, easy to read, therefore. So we have guided the person, or guided the labeling based on a serving and not on 100 grams. And this is included in our guidelines in a box that is dedicated to this, which shows the various characteristics. This in order to educate the user by providing the information. And what we have tried to do, we said this at the beginning, the guidelines are built with a view to educating the consumer in a world, which is the world of nutrition, which is subject to fake news. And we declared also what it is. That is, our campaigns are based on the concepts of Mediterranean diet. All these concepts will be found in our documents that you can download. Anyone can download them free of charge from our website. And we hope that the international world will also go and look at them. And with this, I pass the floor to my colleague, Marco Silano. Good morning to you all. I too join in the thanks expressed by my colleagues. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here to tell you about to present the last part of this presentation, that is the results of the experimentation that Nutrinform has done out in the field with a group of Italian families. After designating or after defining a nutrient score and defining the characteristics of how to identify a single serving and the nutrients that are to be contained in accordance with the European regulation, we wanted to evaluate the efficacy of the front of pack nutrition labeling. Well, in the scientific literature, which is our guiding body, there are various ways for evaluating the efficacy of a front of pack nutrition labeling. Information provided to the consumer, impact on health. This is a difficult term because impact on health is assessed after years and years that a given policy has been implemented on the large scale. Then guiding the user to the purchases he or she makes. Reformulating also with the producers how to change the composition of their products by changing the content of the more critical nutrients, but this is not always possible. Then assessing the nutritional quality of the foods, and we have said that there is no good or bad food. This was said very clearly by the previous speakers. All foods in the with the right frequency and right amount can be part of a healthy and balanced diet. So this too is a parameter which would leave much to be desired. And then understanding the ability to communicate some information to the consumers. We complied with the regulation 1169, which has to do with information provided to consumers. So we considered as an efficacy parameter the way in which Nutrinform battery informs the consumer, just like Article 35 of 1169 provides. in compliance with it, therefore. In order to attain this goal, we identified 3 groups made up of 100 households each that reproduce the Italian demographics, both in terms of income, in terms of education background, which is important in the development of obesity, and for food behavior. These 300 families were divided into 3 groups of 100 households each. So they did their shopping as usual, and once they come home with the shopping, with their groceries, our operators visited them, and they, on specific food products, and we will see which ones, they placed one of 3 possible adhesives. 100 families received the Nutri-Score, the real Nutri-Score of the products they bought. That if Nutri-Score had been implemented, then they would have received that information. Another 100 families or households had Nutrinform battery placed on the various products, as if Nutrinform was informed, and 100 families had a blank sticker. You know that in scientific trials, when you're testing an intervention, and our intervention is the effect of Nutrinform battery on the nutritional knowledge of our users, you need to test another 2 types of interventions, which are called positive control and negative control. The positive control is an intervention in the same context but different from the one whose efficacy is being tested, and then the negative contract, which is no intervention. And this was a blank sticker that was placed on the products. We chose Nutri-Score as a positive control for a number of factors. As you saw in the previous slides shown by Giselli, it is very, very far distant from, well, the Nutri-Score is colored, therefore it is directive. It is a summary label. It summarizes in a letter, in a color, the nature of the nutrient, whereas Nutrinform is the opposite. So we assessed a type Nutri-Score which has a lot of literature behind it, so we could use it as a positive control. These are the 5 categories of products that were given a sticker of Nutri-Score or Nutrinform or a blank sticker. So 5 categories which are all represented in the normal foods eaten by Italian families. And for each product, we chose a product which by composition and formulation is lighter, therefore ham, cured ham or salami. And within each category, there were 2 choices. A choice that was it was light, and the other less light or formulated. At this point, the families received a visit by our investigators who placed the stickers on the product, and then they subjected these families, the persons responsible for grocery shopping, to nutritional knowledge questionnaire. It's an English questionnaire translated into Italian and validated, because whatever is administered in a scientific work or trial has to be validated. So this validates the nutritional knowledge of the individual. There are 45 questions. Each question, so the score is 1, T0, and plus and minus. So the highest score is 45. So this is to understand the nutritional knowledge of the individual. It was administered to the families.
Cioè dopo
At time 0 and T4, namely after 4 weeks. We assessed the nutritional knowledge in the moment in time in which the products were sent with a sticker, and 4 weeks later, when these products had been consumed at home. Now, these are the results. As you can see, they are based on the total questionnaire, and for the 3 dominions made up of 15 questions each, which represents 1/3 of the total value. And they include expert recommendations for healthy and balanced diets, knowledge regarding food and nutrients, and the health impact of the various nutrition schemes. Now, as you can see, and this is an initial statistical analysis, and in the meantime, we're also continuing our interaction with experts in statistics who are providing further information. But this, we feel, is the most important and more comprehensive piece of information. Now, as you can see, those who had products labeled with Nutri-Score began with a certain nutrition knowledge, which remained the same after 4 weeks. Whereas those who used the Nutrinform battery had an increase which appears to be limited, but it is an extremely important and significant increase in their knowledge regarding nutrition, which means that Nutrinform battery is adequate in informing consumers regarding nutrition information, what it is we eat, and the impact that food has on our health. Now, the next steps will be to complete the processing of statistics, because of course we have plenty of data. Then we will have further experiments, further tests in the field, in points of sale. Then we'll be also seeing how Nutrinform battery consumers behave. We'll also have to conduct an impact study on consumer choices, although the FOP shouldn't guide choices. And then we also have another goal, which is that of drafting a report on a yearly basis regarding how a Nutrinform battery has been implemented on Italian products. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Thank you for this very comprehensive presentation. Before we give the floor to the Secretary General for some conclusions, let me just share some figures on our people connected in streaming. We have 260 people connected in Italy, 103 in English, and 100 in French, which means that today's topic is gathering plenty of attention. At this point, let me give the floor to Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Ettore Sequi. Thank you. Let me share some brief conclusions with you. Let me begin by thanking the ministers who attended this meeting. I wish to thank the President of Federalimentare for having organized the event. I'd like to thank Minister Patonelli, Minister Speranza, Deputy Minister Pichetto Fratin for their participation and for their remarks, which contributed to the success of the debate. I also wish to thank the representatives of the various institutions, international organizations, production sectors, academia, and civil society who joined us today. And finally, allow me to thank all of the ambassadors present today, all colleagues who participated both here physically or those who joined us in streaming. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for showing the interest regarding these topics, which, of course, pertain to the health of all of us. Now, our choice in devoting a specific event here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs stems from the awareness that the agri-food sector is a driver in our economy, both domestically and on the European level. It is a driver in our export. It also expresses a key component of our national identity. Italy's agri-food has always been associated to high quality. It is marked by its sustainability and by the way in which it protects biodiversity. It includes research and technological innovation. It includes respect for our local territories and our tradition. All of these characteristics, accompanied with extraordinary quality and all of the techniques we have fine-tuned over the centuries, make Italy's gastronomic products as some of the most appreciated and healthy on the global level. The Mediterranean diet has been recognized by UNESCO as being part of humanity's intangible heritage. It is appreciated worldwide, and it offers a reliable scheme to have a healthy and balanced diet, according to scientific figures. According to the Bloomberg Healthiest Country Index, Italy ranks number 2 on the global level. And it's interesting to note that the healthiest countries in the world are those with the Mediterranean diet. We are rightfully proud of our leadership, and we want this leadership to be celebrated and protected everywhere. That's what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does on a daily basis through its diplomatic network by committing to support in the production our PDOs and geographical indications which are registered on the European level. And then, within the Farm to Fork European strategy, we also work actively to promote a debate on the European level regarding the distortion and counterproductive elements in the traffic light labeling systems. The protection of European consumers is at stake. And that's why, as we've seen today, we are promoting a concept, Nutrinform battery, which is simple, transparent, based on sound scientific data, as we have heard in our experts' presentation today, and I wish to thank them. Our country, therefore, supports the adoption of a European harmonized labeling system, but we feel that our main goal should be that of offering clear guidance and aware guidance when it comes to our consumption choices. It isn't just a matter of defending Italian products. All European citizens deserve the agri-food system to be protected as it deserves to be, as we also should protect our cultural and food heritage. And European systems should be non-discriminatory. They should respect local traditions and food systems associated to healthy diets. As Minister Di Maio mentioned earlier, traffic light labeling systems lead us away from this recommendation based on scientific evidence and common sense. We have also proven, as we've seen today, that traffic light labeling systems offers a misleading representation of nutritional realities, with a system which penalizes the highest quality traditional products. Therefore, the prejudice, the bias, which may stem from the introduction of arbitrary labeling systems is what will strengthen Italy's commitment in promoting adequate safeguarding tools. And we do hope that an increasing number of countries will understand Italy's position when it comes to the traffic light system. I think that battery labeling systems would give Europe a system offering scientific information and objective information at that on the nutritional value of food. And this will allow us to safeguard our and your traditional production by avoiding them to be damaged from obscure or opaque marketing campaigns. We don't want consumers to be misled in choosing unhealthy products to the detriment of other products which are often much healthier. We are representing an Italian system here today made up of businesses, associations, whole sectors, and the academic sector, which together wish to defend a labeling system which is fair, transparent, and scientifically based. And I'm sure that these same views are shared beyond Italy's borders, with plenty of supporters amongst the producers and consumers throughout Europe, to the benefit of all consumers and European citizens. Thank you very much indeed for your participation today.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon.